This video is rated G for gas. Okay, so I'm about to say something pretty heavy that I've never said about any upgrade or Mk2 device ever, so I feel I need to preface first by saying that I owned the original M8 and I absolutely loved it. I mean, what wasn't to love? The thing was powerful, it sounded amazing, it had a slick form factor that you could fit inside your pocket, and it didn't break the bank, at least not compared to the competition at the time. Well, after having said that, and after spending way too many hours deep into the night drinking in the new version, I want to go on the record saying that the M8 Model 2 makes the original feel like a pre-production prototype.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
This thing right here is one of the most satisfying upgrades on pretty much any electronic device I've had in years. Now, before you go out and sell your Model 1, let me clarify that the original remains just as great and relevant as it ever was. In fact, both models are running the same exact software, and the creator has specified that the firmware upgrades that are coming into the Model 2 will be fully compatible with the Model 1. A la deluge. This type of upgrade really makes me happy because it offers a better option for existing users and newcomers while not rendering the old model obsolete in the slightest. The best way to describe it is the difference between the PlayStation 4 and the PS5. Both are running the same games, the core experience is exactly the same, but the new version just has a few quality of life improvements that make it just chef's kiss. Before going in any further, please know that while the Model 2 was sent to me by Dirtywave, I'm not being paid for this video, all my opinions are my own, and if it sounds like I'm shilling or maybe a bit overzealous about this thing, please know that it's just because I'm absolutely head over heels about it, and really, I'm not trying to sell you anything, I don't even have an affiliate link. I just really needed to share my excitement with you today. If you're already subscribed, huge welcome back. If this is your first time here, hi, welcome to the Midlife Synthesis. Let's get started. So, what's new? Well, it turns out a lot, since my last video at least. Software-wise, there have been tons of upgrades to the firmware, and even a new synth engine was added in the year or so since that video came out. But I'm going to start with the new hardware improvements first. The Model 2 is heavier, it feels sturdier, more streamlined, a more mature and thought-out design than the predecessor. Whereas the old model had a protruding screen frame and steel bolts sticking out of the corners, the Model 2's front panel is elegant and smooth with no bevels or screws sticking out, making it feel like it could have been easily made by a much larger company like Apple or Samsung. Another welcome change that makes it feel much more with the times is that the USB connection has been switched over to USB Type-C, and for that I'm grateful. This port allows for charging and for streaming audio. The new power button also acts as a level indicator, and it'll start glowing red while charging and turn completely off when full. The smoothness of this new enclosure continues down the sides and the back, where the much thicker back panel is very much curved in stark contrast to the flat square edges of the slimmer OG. All that newfound junk in the trunk is necessary to accommodate the much larger new battery, but it has the added benefit of making the Model 2 way more comfortable in your hands, something that's especially more noticeable when playing with it for long stretches of time. One of the few criticisms I had about the original was that my hands would eventually get fatigued when I binged on it, since the frame was very slim and it kind of felt sharply cornered. Last night, however, I was on Model 2 for a little over 3 hours straight, and if not for one of my kids needing help going to the bathroom, I could have easily continued for a lot longer with no discomfort on my hands whatsoever. Speaking of portable Grooveboxes, what's your go-to instrument when it comes to making beats on the go? Leave me a comment below with your favorite so I can go check it out maybe, and hell, maybe even make a review. Another big reason I was able to burn through the midnight oil was that the screen is not only bigger, but it has a much higher resolution as well. One of the most frequent reasons that had folks thinking twice about diving in to get an M8 was the small size of the screen. Well, the new screen is a cozy 3.5 inches versus the original 2.8. That's wider than my iPhone 12. And the resolution was bumped from 320 by 240 to 480 by 320. And believe you me, it really shows. I mentioned before that this feels like going from a PlayStation 4 to a PlayStation 5, and the resolution is one of the key reasons why the Model 2 feels that way. The letters and numbers look absolutely beautiful, and there are no traces of the low-res graininess of the original look. Whereas the old model has that nostalgic feel to it, the Model 2 feels like what a modern tracker should look like, and I really can't get enough of the new and improved aesthetic. Of course, having a bigger screen will require more energy to keep the lights on, and that's where one of the Model 2's most important quality of life improvements comes into play, the new battery. As I mentioned before, apart from being one of the reasons why the new M8 is chunkier, the new battery also means that you'll be able to run this bad boy for about 12 hours without having to plug it back in. I've been using it relentlessly for about 4 days on my first charge, and there's still plenty of juice in the tank, so even though I can't say for sure if it's 12 hours, I can confidently tell you that you're going to have a hard time trying to drain the battery on this thing. The final major hardware addition and difference with the original is the new internal microphone. As I've said many times before, and lots of videos before this one, I believe that all portable samplers should come equipped with an internal mic, by law. If not,
you right to jail.
That was a feature that I really missed in the original, and I'm really happy to have it here in Model 2. The recordings using the internal mic sound crisp, and the quality is on par with other internal mics that I've tried out on other Grooveboxes such as the Deluge, KO2, and Tracker Mini. With sampling being as good as it is on the M8, I really love that going outside and sampling in the real world is now a thing, and I really look forward to getting experimental on this in future projects. Since publishing my last video, the M8's firmware has grown in many ways, but perhaps the biggest of them all is the addition of the Hypersynth Engine. Now, what's so special about another synth engine, you might ask? Well, part of the Tracker way is that they usually have 8 tracks that are all monophonic. Now, there are plenty of workarounds like programming chords in different tracks and then resampling them back into a single track, but that solution is usually pretty tedious. Other workarounds include using the operators on the FM synth to create chords with some pretty cool results. Now, what makes the Hypersynth special is that it's a polyphonic instrument and you can build chords directly on it. This is pretty much a big deal in the Tracker universe, as it means freeing up track lanes, or at the very least, makes having huge chords easily available and ready to program. Just like with all its other synth engines, the Hypersynth sounds great quality-wise, and tone-wise, it really fits nicely in with the rest of the M8 sonic palette. Okay, so now that I'm done drooling, let's get into some criticisms. I've come to accept that when you make music with the Tracker, you are intentionally limiting yourself in many ways, and that's just part of the challenge as well as part of the charm of Tracker music making. Trackers in general have a completely different workflow and mindset to something like a Push 3 or an MPC. You can't judge them in the same way as you would one of those Grooveboxes. I could start complaining about it having only 8 tracks or not having polyphony, but then the whole point of Trackers is to do things in that framework. I guess a better question would be, why would you even bother with a Tracker when all those other powerful Grooveboxes already exist? And my answer would be, focus, commitment,
the sheer will.
There's a level of detail you can get into here that I would go as far as to say is not possible, or at least very hard to achieve with any other mainstream Groovebox. Getting started is always difficult, I'll give you that. Each new project in itself is an uphill battle as you craft each new instrument and then step by step start eking out something that vaguely resembles a piece of music. There's a lot of trial and error, and it's easy to give up and get frustrated, but inevitably, in every piece of music that I've made on the M8, if I stick with it long enough, there is a turning point, a moment where I break through that wall and I cut loose, and then I begin to weave through the noise. I start just coming up with musical ideas that I can execute at breakneck speed. Not only that, but with a level of nuance and detail that I can only describe as surgical. It's a beautiful thing, and it's hard to put down the M8 when that happens. It all makes sense, and all that effort that you did before becomes worth it. This is one of my desert island instruments, for sure. And if you're not afraid of a little bit of a challenge, the M8 Model 1 and 2 remains one of the best portable music making devices ever made. I'll be sure to follow up this video with more news as the M8 continues to evolve and develop, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. I want to thank Tim, the creator of Dirtywave, for sending me this amazing instrument. Please make sure to support him by buying directly from Dirtywave and not from scalpers. Have a little patience and it'll get there. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, or at least entertaining. Have a great week. See you next time.